Hi, this is Bob Weiss. I'm the host of Shaking Your World. Cheers. Folks, welcome home. Yet another episode of Shaking Your World. We are here today with a rather unique artist who has developed a product line that is a little bit off kilter, some might think, but I think that personally it really portrays the oddities of life, and through those oddities of life I have found my best experiences. So Weebs, welcome to Shakers, welcome home. It's good to have you on board, and we hope you enjoy the grilling that you're about to get. Tell us the story.
Oh man, what kind of story would you like to hear? I have lots of them.
Well, let's start off. You were born in the Chicago metro area, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you went to art school there.
Yes.
And well, it's your story. Pick it up.
All right. Probably one of the best stories I could tell you is to get myself through art school. I was working at Virgin Megastore off of in Chicago, off of Michigan Avenue, and one day somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, Cher's upstairs." And I grew up listening to Sonny and Cher, and I didn't believe them, and so I went running up the stairs, and I'm running through an aisle, and I step on my shoelace, and I trip and fall, and this gentleman in a long leather trench coat with long hair and one of those like Fu Manchu mustaches catches me, and Cher is probably about 3 feet away from me. I almost pummeled Cher, and she looks at me and she goes, "Honey, are you okay?" I had no words other than Cher.
It's a lovely story.
Thank you.
Your brush with celebrity, as it were.
There were many of brushes. Actually, Ron Jeremy brushed my boob once while I was there. I'm waiting for my lawsuit.
Well, you know, he's away right now, so it might take a while for that
Right.
that suit to form. Yeah, Michigan Avenue, what a great experience just hanging out in downtown Chicago in that loop and just watching the world go by. And be fascinating every day.
Amazing, yes.
Yeah. So you had mentioned before that your parents are both from Wisconsin, right?
Yep.
And met in art school, fell in love.
Yes.
How sweet is that? And forced you kids to learn the basics of art, right?
Yes, yes.
So what's the first thing that you remember sketching, doodling, drawing, or something like that?
Whenever my parents would go to the bank, or if they went to the grocery store, they would always come home with the coloring contests, and would have me and my brother fill them out and present them. And I always remember that we would lose because they would tell us, "Oh, the parents did it," instead of us. They never believed that us kids knew how to color within lines. So.
Well, this could have gone somewhere else. I thought for sure you'd talk about learning how to forge and counterfeit money and becoming a paper hanger, but that's nice. Okay, so from there, what happened?
From there, my parents always pushed us to go ahead and take art classes. Mm-hmm. Middle school was probably my first exposure where our art teacher let us do whatever we wanted in middle school, and so I, at the time, decided to just draw aliens for some reason. I was going through an alien phase.
Sure.
And then in high school, I had this amazing teacher, Mr. Wolf, who always taught us to just go with the flow. He would wear these amazing ties that he would make, and he'd match them with his Chuck Taylors, and I feel like that's where some of my whimsical style comes from. He would let us watch Labyrinth during lunchtime, and that's where I started.
David Bowie, holy cow.
Right?
Cool.
So I actually started doing series back then in which I did Queen Elizabeth with a safety pin between her lips, and the covers of Sex Pistols and Sid Vicious, and won Artist of the Year one year in high school, and that's how I decided to go to Columbia in Chicago.
Very nice. So Columbia, you get your art degree, and you decide you're going to do what with that?
I threw myself into the art world for about 5 years and realized there wasn't much out there for starving artists. And so I actually went back and got my master's in education. So I decided to become an art teacher, hence my Instagram, Bad Art Teacher.
That's one of the issues I have, and we spoke briefly about this, is that art schools today, and as long as I've been hiring art students, which is 35 plus years, that they don't teach them the basic fundamentals of how to market and how to monetize their art. And I think that's the biggest travesty of all, because they're not inexpensive, right? So you take somebody that's got this wild talent. I mean, there are, there's dullards that don't, but you take people that have got this great talent and ability, and they can see things that normal people don't see.
Yeah.
but they don't know what to do with that, right?
Absolutely.
And it's terrible. So if only they take a semester out or part of a semester and teach them the fundamentals, how to balance a checkbook, how to write an estimate for something, how to cost for your time, and then have a concept of what's going on in the world so you can then market appropriately, and then of course how to get paid as well, right? Wouldn't that make just a world of difference?
Completely agree. I feel a big part of that was that we would get to a certain point in which a lot of our professors would realize that we were going from being their student to being their competition. And so therefore a lot of the education ended up being halted, and we were kind of just thrown out there, which as we were talking earlier, I'm having that struggle now. You know, I just started drawing on a whim, and people started getting interested and coming to me and asking me like, hey, I want you to do this shirt for our metal shred fest, or I want you to do this design for our motorcycle club, or I own a clothing company. Will you create John Wayne Gacy on a motorcycle for me?
So there you are in the periphery, and now you're doing all these unusual, untoward things in some ways,
Yep.
right? And yet, this is where you are finding the market, right?
Exactly.
Cool.
But how
So
do you
I want to
market
back up a
yourself?
little bit, Weeb. So at what point did you realize that you, as the sorcerer's apprentice, right, because you're going to art school, were as good or better than those that are teaching you?
Man, that's a difficult question. You know, I actually have this conversation with my students all the time, in which I never feel like somebody's actually as good or better. I feel like everybody can be an artist. You can draw a stick figure and still be considered an artist, like a Keith Haring. You know, when it comes to art, it's in the eye of the beholder. And a lot of us have this like misconceived notion of what is incredible art. And a lot of it is from what's been forced on us over the years of art school. But the reality is that there's plenty of people out there like Yayoi Kusama who goes ahead and draws dots for a living.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So what do you think about so many of these art installations where you've got a 20 by 20 foot piece of white?
Yeah.
Is that art?
That's a difficult question too, because
Everything's art, and yet
everything's art, but you can go ahead and you can thank Marcel Duchamp for that one, because Marcel Duchamp is the one that went ahead and questioned what is art. And people said, well, art's on a pedestal and art's labeled, and if you put something on a pedestal, it's art. And so he went ahead and said, well, if I take a man's urinal and I flip it upside down and I sign it, our mutt, and put it on a pedestal in a museum, then therefore it's considered art. There was an artist that felt that there's many of artists actually that feel like bodily fluids are art, because therefore it comes from the artist, and so therefore it's art. And there's galleries right now that are having problems with human extract coming out of cans that have been disintegrated over the years, and they don't know if you should clean it up. Is that ruining the art or hindering it?
throw it out. Okay.
I would agree with you.
Okay,
I
so
would agree
maybe
with
it had its moment in the sun, but that moment has come and gone. Time to move on, right?
Yes. What is art? That's the big question.
The Guggenheim in Bilbao, Spain, a couple years ago, and the lower level, I believe it was the lower, maybe the second, is dedicated to Yoko Ono. And it is a large footprint, a large piece of real estate that's hung up for Yoko Ono. And I'm thinking, okay, so she's got her own celebrity for what she did, but you know, a whole lot of these things, if you were in 8th grade and you'd submit this as an art project, you would not pass muster at all. So, you know, that's only a matter of her having celebrity, and therefore someone might perceive it as having some other value to it. But I got to tell you, I appreciate a variety of different things that are artistic endeavors and different media, and I have a hard time with some things, even like at the end of Wisconsin Avenue in Milwaukee, overshadowing the Calatrava, we've got this assemblage of 8 girders that are painted orange, and it's been there for 30 years, 40 years, and it easily could go somewhere else in my mind. I think it's had its day, it's had its moment right there, and maybe art installations don't have to last forever, especially ones that have some questionable value, particularly in front of not just this beautiful expanse of Mother Nature with this gorgeous lake that we have here at the lakefront of Milwaukee, but you've got a Calatrava project that's there that is, you know, one of a kind in the world. and it's overshadowed by this. And I have to think that at some point, reason has to prevail, and maybe that means we need an artistic board that actually has the balls to say, yeah, this is great, but after 25 or 30 years, maybe it's time to move it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Just something like that.
I mean, I completely agree. One of my favorite artists actually is Ivan Albright, and he went to the Art Institute, and I've been told that they have over at least 30 of his portraits. And in my time of going to the Art Institute, which has been at least 38 years now, I have probably only seen 2 or 3 by him. A Soul Named Ida and The Story of Dorian Gray. And it's a shame that he's this amazing artist and they keep him in a vault, but yet you have some of the same, what could be considered garbage, rotating through or staying in place.
Well, at least the Dorian Gray pieces of that is an extraordinary piece. Art Institute of Chicago is something that I don't think enough people appreciate, and that's in Chicago and Milwaukee and whatever the Midwest. It is a phenomenal gig.
I definitely don't think enough people appreciate the Milwaukee Art Museum. Just the architecture alone is so beautiful.
Basquiat?
Basquiat.
What do you think?
So my mindset of Basquiat has always been, I had an instructor, and to this day I'll have no idea if it was actually true. I don't know if I should name drop, but my instructor's name was MacArthur Binion, and he used to tell us stories back in the day of how he and Basquiat would drive through in Basquiat's Rolls Royce, doing lots of illegal things and having a blast. And so I have this amazing image of Basquiat in my head of just hanging out with my professor. But Basquiat also, with everything that's been going on with the Black Lives movement, or Black Lives Matter movement, I really feel like he should be coming back and having a very prominent perspective, a very prominent presence currently.
As the man on the street, I agree with that assessment you have. Speaking of the BLM movement, and by the way, you can say anything you want here because there's like maybe at most 2 or 3 people that watch these things, so it's not going anywhere.
I don't know. Let's hope we'll have some more viewers now that I'm
maybe 1 or 2. I do think that we also, as a society, have a tendency to place an emphasis on things that are topical, that maybe don't deserve the attention that they otherwise would get. And I'm not suggesting for a moment that I should be that person in charge of adjudicating what can or can't work somewhere or have value to it. But I do think that we have a tendency to rush forward to try to make up for some other societal discrepancies and promote things that maybe don't pass the muster for art, just like that installation of the 20 by 20 white screen that's up. So I don't think that's going to go anywhere. That's just the way our psyche in America, that's just the way we are. And I do think that also includes some pieces that have merit, that should be up and out and recognized in our desire to draw attention and be a good guy for something that really doesn't matter.
I will say from that movement, there is an incredible insurgence of art coming from people that are not recognized because of it. I know when they started boarding up Chicago, I was one of the first people that friends contacted and just said, hey, do you want to spend an afternoon doing some Black Lives Matter murals in the neighborhood? And just watching a lot of people get out there and show their art on public display that normally wouldn't be showing it if it wasn't for somebody coming and investing a large amount of money and saying, here's money, we want this extravagant mural. You're getting a lot of artists who are working at Blick art materials, or working at local bars that are getting out there and being able to express their art for the first time.
Cool. All right, now that we've softened you up a bit by talking about the art world overall and your education, let's talk about what you are known for today.
All right.
So you know that here at Shakers, one of the many tours that we do, historic tours, is the Cream City Cannibal Tour, which of course is the Jeffrey Dahmer tour. We have a direct connection, of course, to Dahmer. This was his hunt ground out here. And obviously he came in for his gin and tonics as well, rather an unusual young man. And then you got his other proclivities for, killing people, eating people, and things like that. So, removing the flesh so he could memorialize them by, keeping their skulls handy. Why not, right? Just the average guy next door. But you have taken the entire genre of serial killers and you have memorialized them in a variety of different whimsical capacities, if we can use whimsical and serial killer in the same sentence. And you have a series of Valentine's cards, which is, I think, what really brought you to us.
Yep.
Okay. Please. Tell us.
Well, Dahmer's always been a favorite of mine in many capacities, from what you were saying with the cannibalism and whatnot. I have a house full of oddities, and I believe I like to collect odd people along with that. But many years ago, my buddy Jake Orvis, one of my first trips up here to Milwaukee, decided to take us on his fun-filled adventure of Dahmer, and we went and saw the ambassador, and I made snow angels in the land that is still there.
Sure.
And so this was one of our top haunts to go to, as well as I like to go to the L&L for their serial killer
in Chicago.
History in Chicago. But coming from Chicago, St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And so I always felt that there's kind of this gruesome history behind the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And so a couple of years ago, I've been doing Valentines for friends based off of their interests for years. One of my favorite is Gizmo giving the shocker, and it says, "Don't snatch after midnight." There's always a little sexual innuendo behind there. But I decided on a whim, I asked people what they wanted, and they said serial killers. And so I had people shout out on Facebook what their interests were in serial killers and give me a list. And we came up with Dahmer and Son of Sam and Richard Ramirez.
Ramirez, of course.
Ramirez. I'm trying to think of...
What a happy, smiling guy that Ramirez.
We got some Carl Pranzam. I probably butcher his name there. My favorite. I have a clown obsession. I don't know where it came from, but John Wayne Gacy, I always said that I want to get my own van so I can go motorcycle shows and call it the Pogo Van.
Sure. Well, Chicago roots right there. That's, yeah. Why not?
I remember as a kid, always the rumor of a clown in a van driving around our neighborhoods. Also another favorite, Charles Manson. Who doesn't love Charlie?
No swastika here in that forehead.
No, okay. Try to keep it kosher.
Okay.
Got Eileen, I'm sorry. So when I went ahead and I created these, I went online and I researched a lot of their specific sayings, a lot of quotes. I went through hundreds and hundreds of quotes and then looked at them and said, how can I go ahead and gear these towards kind of like a Valentine-esque?
Not to blow smoke up your skirt, but you really have captured. This really is good. Really, really good.
Thank you. So I started with Prismacolor markers and drew them large scale. Lizzie Borden. I drew them large scale with Prismacolor markers, and then during that time, my kids at school were making Valentines, and so I had hundreds of hearts and lots of red watercolor, and so I decided to take it a little step further and make it into a collage. And
man, I love what you've done with this hair here. You got that little horn thing going on. That is just beautifully emblematic. Yeah, and Jeffrey. Here we go.
I feel you can kind of get my Warhol inspiration and the two colors and the pop art in there.
I love it. Well, at some point I want to talk to you about commissioning a new Dahmer shirt as well to add to our collection of things, the Cream City Cannibal. This is really choice work. So how do people contact you if they want to buy these things, a set of your cards or whatever the case might be?
Currently, right now, it's Bad Art Teacher, all one, on Instagram, and so that's my main contact for this and all of my other art. Like I said, I've had a lot of different companies reach out and ask me to do logos, band logos. I've done a band logo for this band Awful, and I did a couple of great T-shirts for a T-shirt company called Blonde Tooth, and I did one for the Milwaukee Litas, which is an all-girl motorcycle club, and So I just love.
This is the right time to be born because there are some artists that are just in the wrong place, wrong time, and whatever. But clearly, serial killers, anything to do with true crime and serial killers is so hot right now.
Absolutely.
I am amazed that it's primarily women, mid-20s to maybe late 30s, that are on our Cream City Cannibal tour. The emails I get, people want more information, whatever else. We participate with John Borowski in the serial killer culture, both in his movie and his documentary series. He's got a new thing coming out, but he's covered Holmes, he's covered Panzam, I think he's got a thing with Ramirez coming up as well. So he's the guide. You know John?
I don't.
I will hook you up with him. He's a Chicago native. And John Borowski. I
have a fantastic idea for a woman serial killer film, so I would love to talk to him about it.
Well, he can be that cat. You're not going to have to go out and reenact things, though, are you?
I don't know. I've always had a fascination with bearded men, and so I always thought that it would be great, if there was a serial killer film about a woman that scalped beards and sewed them into embroidery patterns.
Well, that's
just me and my sick, twisted humor.
It sounds like Netflix to me. But
it actually comes from me and my friends always had a joke. When you go on a Tinder date, the first thing you should ask them is, if you were a serial killer, what would be your trademark? Because it can tell you a lot about people.
What kind of responses did you get with that?
I had one that said that they would like to leave McDonald's toys. One person told me that he would go after people's ex-boyfriends that did them wrong.
That's everybody in the world, by the way. But yeah.
So far, I had one who was a chef, and so he said that he would do his famous chef swoop with the spoon, but nothing too exciting yet. I'm waiting for the really good one. Then I'll know it's the one.
You need to change your profile, I think, a little bit on that, just to bring out the full impetus of what that could be. Interesting. So where do you see this going? I mean, obviously doing things with bands is cool. Doing things just for the mass number of people that are on the periphery of marketing and advertising that want to get a push on something is cool. These things are extraordinary. What's next for you?
I feel like right now I'm dipping my toe in a lot of different things. I have a children's book that I have written that I'm really trying to push to get out there.
With serial killers or without?
Without serial killers. The children's book was strictly about art materials and the purpose of using art materials.
Cool.
But I have also wanted to do an adult series of art books for adult males. But do you remember those little books that they would give the toddlers in case they accidentally dropped their drink on it so that it wouldn't shrivel up?
Oh, yeah.
They're the board books.
Sure.
I always wanted to do one called Confession of an Areola, How to Play with Titties, to teach male men the appropriate way of playing with boobs. A lot of them don't know. They like to tune into Tokyo or,
for God's sakes, just get in there and play. That's the hands-on is the best experience, I'm thinking, but okay.
Currently I'm running an art group called Bad Art Teachers Creative Art Teachers Crafts for Creative Cunts, and so we're doing a monthly art night, normally geared around lots of phallical symbols and whatnot. We just had our first Stitch and Bitch and did a lot of embroidery. I'm also working on a series of freak shows. I'm having a lot of friends come at me with, can you make me as a freak show? So I did one of my friends as Dougie the Dog-Faced Boy and one of my girlfriends as the Bearded Lady. And then I actually just posted on Facebook asking people what their favorite cult leader is because I wanted to do a new series this year.
Oh, Koresh, why not, right?
Based off of, our favorites like Jim Jones and Anton LaVey.
A little pack of Kool-Aid to go with that, perhaps, or something?
Flavor Aid,
yes.
Yeah. I went as him last year for Halloween. It was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm glad that you moved up here from Chicago. So how do you like Milwaukee?
I love Milwaukee. I crashed a 40th birthday party 10 years ago at Frank's Power Plant and fell in love with the place. I walked in and it looked like a John Waters film, and I've been coming back. It started once every 6 months. And then I got a DJ gig here under the name Queen Cock Block, and was DJing Wildcat Wednesdays over at Frank's. Lots of 50s doo-wop and psychobilly and 60s garage. And then I joined a car and psycho club up here called the Asphalt Bombers. And so this has always been my home away from home. I've been going to Sabbatic and Shakers and you name it for years. And I lost my job around COVID, and it was just time to finally come home. And I don't regret one moment of it. Milwaukee knows how to party way more than Chicago. Don't tell Chicagoans.
No, of course not. No, not that.
Like,
well, Shaker's always been considered, at least by some of us, as the island of misfit toys or lost toys, and I think that's where the most unusual people, the best characters come from, and life is to be lived in the short expanse that we have.
Yeah.
And to interact with people that are other than the norm, I think, just really enhances and enriches everything. And so much of what you see on a daily basis is just the same old mediocrity.
Absolutely.
And as a chef, I see that in food all the time. And, Milwaukee's got a lot of great things going for it. Most importantly, it's people. But in my mind, the food scene is just kind of, and even before COVID, it's just kind of limping. It's just kind of there, but there's not a lot of innovation. So this is so refreshing to talk to an artist who's actually able to take her creativity and her whatever your muse might be, and to make that into something that's making money for you and making a living and giving you a hell of a lot of enjoyment. And I'm sure to other people as well. So kudos to you.
Thank you. I am so honored to be here. Like you were saying, just the individuality, that's one thing that drew me in Milwaukee, is every single bar here feels like you walk into it and it's untouched. I love the kitschiness of some places where you walk in and it's the old man 50s dive bar, and it's the same old men that are still sitting there drinking. And every single bar has its uniqueness. And like you said, your wayward home, I feel like my friends call my home the Weaver's wayward home for wayward psychobillies. And so my first time here, the experience was seeing my friend Sir Pinkerton play. And I felt like the only other place that I've been to that reminded me of it was Ernestine and Hazel's, that's in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm sorry, Missouri's been on my mind lately. Memphis, Tennessee. But this was the first establishment that I've walked into that you feel like you're walking into a part of history, and it's been untouched. And I feel like with every band and every drink that you guys bring in, it preserves that. And that's why I love coming here.
Thank you. There's no band quite like Professor Pinkerton and the Magnificents, or now is the Irrelevant Orchestra, but man, they are the hardest working band that I've seen in the Midwest, and they just bring it. They bring it. Underappreciated because they're in Milwaukee, but man, those cats can just wail. And we're happy to have them as the house band here. Beautiful snowy day here in Wisconsin. We had our, at least on the west end, we had about 10 inches of snow. It's probably about 6 or 8 here, but kind of a mess. So of course, Milwaukee is we've been spoiled up here. We're unaccustomed to driving in the snow and moving around the snow. We're still under, of course, the pandemic rules, so a lot of people don't have to. And I think that the city has just said, well, if they're not going to the office, we're not going to bother to plow, right? So one of the largest cities in the country, and yet we're like Mayberry in some ways.
I won't lie, that's my biggest argument so far is, especially if you're driving from Chicago up to Wisconsin, it's like as soon as you get over the border, it's like clear roads and then one lane, and everybody's going 30 miles an hour. And not used to. I'm used to getting into a warm car and going to my warm job, and here left my roommate doing all the plowing today, and I feel bad, but
well, not to get this into a political conversation, but I would say when the mayor of the fine city of Milwaukee doesn't bother to go to his office at City Hall, but does his podcast and news reports, whatever else, from his living room, that says something right there. So clearly, if the chief exec's not going to bother to drive down to the office, why would anybody else, right?
Right.
Cool. Weems, this has been a lot of fun. Let's just talk for a moment about what you're drinking. You like old fashions here, don't you?
Love old fashions. It's my go-to here.
Cool. Why?
You know what? I think it reminds me of my my mom's small town in Thorpe, Wisconsin. Every single wedding we ever had at the Quonset hut, everybody, that was the only thing that you could get was beer or old-fashioned sour, or old-fashioned sweet.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's a little memory of Wisconsin, and
cool.
You guys do it right.
Thank you very much. Williams, it's been a pleasure having you again. How do people find you on Instagram?
Bad art teacher.
Bad art teacher. I'm sure you're actually a really good art teacher. I'm sure your kids really have an experience with you that they're not otherwise getting. Kudos again to you. I love what you're doing, and keep it up.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Cheers.
Folks, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to watch us. And any questions, send us that email, shakersmilwaukee@gmail.com, and I hope you keep tuning in. Cheers.